Hey everyone, we're looking at Premiere. Adobe Premiere is a video editing tool. I reckon it'll be a great tool to add to your skill set in relation to motion graphics. We can, with Premiere, combine obviously video that we shoot or source with sound effects, music, voice, dialogue. We can combine it also with image, different types of images. Um, and we can also include our motion graphics that we're creating with Adobe After Effects and the like. Um, let's see what we can do with it. I'm going to flip over to our an open Premiere project. I'm working on a corporate video here. It's pretty sort of jokey, but I think a project like this will get us up and running and get us through the basics and hopefully give us enough kind of knowledge to implement, use in our own project work. I suppose we should start by having a look around the interface and just kind of getting familiar. Um, just like After Effects, it's a pretty dense interface. There's a lot going on, lots of nooks and crannies to get used to. You can see here with my project a few things that might be familiar to you. You've got some kind of composition or viewport, canvas, stage windows. You've got obviously the timeline across the bottom there, which is where everything is happening across time. There's a project bin, kind of like After Effects, and maybe some semi-familiar tools in this tool palette, some playback controls and main kind of menus up the top, and we'll look at some of those as we go along. I'll give you a link to this finished project so that you can have a look at exactly what we're putting together there, but it's a short 30-second narrative to do with a business. It's got an intro and an outro and some edited video in the middle combined with some text and image. Also, some sound is weaved in there as well. I reckon we should open a new project and look at how we can incorporate some of our own assets. So I'm going to close down this project. Just go File and Close Project. And I'm going to create a new project. And you can either do that here in this welcome screen, or you could go File, New Project. It gives us another welcome screen for some reason here, where I can give my project a name, and I'll give it Corp Vid maybe. It's going to be my one, could be one of many. So that's my project name. I'm going to work in a particular folder somewhere on my computer, and I'm on a Mac here obviously, so I'm going to go into my movies folder. I'm working into my movies folder, and I've got this Premiere tutorial start folder with a bunch of assets in there, and that's where I'm going to save my Premiere project. And I'll click choose. We can use this space to select media to bring into our project automatically. I'm not going to do that this time around. I'm just going to hit create, and that's going to give me a blank, brand new, fresh project. And you can see it looks a little bit more devoid of content there. Still, we've got our project window over here. We've got two kind of panels here for viewing video. This one over here looks at source clips, and this one over here looks at our edited video. We've got an audio, I don't know what you call it, but it gives us a sense of how loud our audio is as it's playing, and we've got a timeline across the bottom here. Maybe I should import some audio and video, and get that happening in our project bin, and then we can start making our first sequence. So to import some content, we'll go File, Import, and we will navigate to our folder with our assets. And I've prepared some sound, some After Effects, some images, and some footage. And I'm just going to start by importing that footage. And you can see that it's imported a folder into my project bin, which is kind of good. It's a good way of keeping things organized. Inside the project bin, we can look at our assets in different ways, either as a list or as kind of thumbnails. I quite like the list. If I want to make a new folder, I can add a new bin there. They call folders bins in Premiere and video editing generally, I think. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 video files there. And if I click on one or double click on one, it'll open it up here in this source monitor window. And I'm just making some adjustments here, and you can see that's kind of similar to Adobe applications, generally speaking. I am using the learning workspace. You can experiment with the different workspace, opens up different kinds of windows. Each of those workspaces, as you know, we can customize. I reckon the learning one gives us a good kind of range of panels that are useful to us in a project like the one that we're building. So there's our footage. I'm just going to select back in the main bin there, and you can use this import panel here for importing, but I just prefer to go to the file menu and import. I could go Command I as well. I'm going to import some sound as well. So we'll just import those 2 batches of media. And I've got some sound files here. If I double click on a sound file, you'll see that it opens up in this kind of monitor window. So this is not like what we've edited. This is just allows us to get a kind of look at the assets that we have. And like, so if I wanted to just check asset or video 01 MP4, I can double click on that and I can play through it if I want, or I can scrub through it quickly. I can move around the timeline as well. I can trim it if I want, or zoom into the timeline if I want. And I can do the same with some sound. I can scrub through that sound as well. Or you might have heard that drag through the sound. Over here is where our edited video will go, and so we'll move assets into a timeline here, and then when we play that timeline back, we'll see and hear that material in this secondary window over here. Or maybe this is a primary window and this is a secondary window. Let's make a sequence, I think. So let's come up to the File menu and we'll go New, Sequence. And so I suppose this is like a comp in After Effects. It's our kind of, it's a timeline workspace where we can add media to. Oops, go File, New, Sequence. So we've got a bunch of stuff in here. We've got a whole lot of preset video formats, video sizes, and there's so many to really get your head around. There's also a bunch of settings that we could adjust manually if we wanted to just kind of build our own particular sequence with its own properties. I'm going to choose a preset, and one that I know is quite useful that I use all the time is the DSLR 1080p at 25 frames per second. That's quite often a format that I'm shooting video in and editing video in. So let's use that for this project. And so that's going to give us a video that is 1920 wide. It's going to be 1920 wide by 1080 high at 25 frames per second and square pixels. Let's click OK, and our timeline becomes a little bit more detailed. So we've got time running across the this sort of x-axis, I suppose. We've got a series of channels here. So it's sort of like layers, but they're sort of like kind of slots where we can put media rather than layers like we have in Photoshop. And so we've got slots for video, we've got slots for audio, and images would go and motion graphics would go into those video slots. I reckon we should drop something into the timeline. So we can just drag something directly from our project window and put it somewhere into one of these slots. And I'm going to go to the first slot right at the 0 point. Okay, and I'm going to get this this warning message that's asking me whether I want to keep the sequence that I've made at the settings that I set when I made the sequence, or change them to the settings of the video. And that'll depend on what you want to do, but I want to keep it the same as the settings that I set, that DSLR preset, which was 1080p. So I'm going to keep the settings, keep those existing settings, and click OK. All right, and now I will see some footage actually in my video. So this is the video that I'm making over on the right-hand side there. Let's look at navigating around our timeline. So we can zoom into our timeline by dragging this slider here, and we can move that slider along to move through our time. We've got our timeline indicator. We can scrub through our project by just dragging the timeline indicator. We can expand the size of these channels there by dragging these sliders here, which is kind of good. I'm going to keep that around about that size there. Let me try that again. Maybe something like that. All right, so that's our first bit of footage in our timeline. I'm going to put some sound in there this time, or next, and I've got a voiceover that I'm going to drop into the timeline, just to combine some video with some sound. Now you see this piece of video that I dropped in does not have any sound associated with it. If I shot some video with my camera, it's likely that my camera would have a mic on it and pick up some sound, and the sound channel would be combined with the video. Not in this case, the sound's been stripped out. And I've got a voiceover file here, which is an MP3 that doesn't have any video attached with it. So I'm going to drag that down into the first slot of my timeline there. And you can see that that is a waveform that goes for a certain amount of time. I think it's like around about 35 seconds long. And now if I scrub through, you'll be able to hear that kind of sound in a very sped up chipmunky kind of way. Let's go back to the start and I'll quickly just play it.
Welcome to Industrial, where safety isn't just a priority.
So I've combined some sound with some video there in my timeline. And we're often running, I suppose. We've had a look at the interface of Premiere, and we've decided on a project that we're going to put together. In the next videos, I'll break these into a set. We're going to look at adding more clips to the timeline, cutting the video, and combining more assets, and we'll eventually end up exporting a video to a final kind of rendered MP4 or something like that. So I'll see you back here shortly.